Some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. A sealed tomb opens in Seattle. 50 years of silence. Broken. Scientists step inside and every one of them freezes. The body shows no decomposition. Muscle still dense. Tendons still elastic. Bones harder than any living human on record. The man in that coffin is Bruce Lee. He looks like he died yesterday. But that is not what terrifies them. In his blood, they find a compound matching nothing in medicine. Nothing in toxicology. Nothing in nature. Governments scramble to classify it. Corporations fight for access. Then an old man arrives from rural China carrying a sealed letter in Bruce Lee's handwriting dated 1 week before his death. 6 words. They will open it too soon. What did Bruce Lee discover that someone wanted buried with him? If you are new here, please subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of all this. Not 50 years ago. Not to the day Bruce Lee died. I mean the real beginning. The morning Dr. Karen Liu walked into her lab and realized her life was about to change forever. Karen was a forensic biochemist at the University of Washington. She was good at her job. Not famous. Not flashy. The kind of scientist who triple-checks every result before she says a word out loud. She had been assigned to the preservation study almost as an afterthought. A routine check on a famous burial site. The university wanted good press. The family estate had given conditional approval. Nobody expected to find anything unusual. But here is the thing. Nothing about this was routine from the moment they cracked the seal. Karen was the first one to take the blood sample. She drew it herself. Steady hands. Proper protocol. She sealed the vial and labeled it with the date and case number. Just another sample. That is what she told herself. But even then, standing in that tomb, she felt something was wrong. The body did not look right. And by that I mean it looked too right. 50 years in a coffin and the muscle tissue had not broken down. The skin had not collapsed. She had seen bodies exhumed after 5 years that looked worse than this. She brought the vial back to the lab that same afternoon. Ran the first panel of tests before dinner. Standard toxicology screen. Standard decomposition markers. And every single result came back wrong. Not contaminated. Not degraded. Wrong. The compound in the blood did not match any known substance in her database. She ran it again. Same result. She ran it on a different machine. Same result. Now get this. Karen had been doing this work for 16 years. She had analyzed thousands of samples. She had never seen a compound that returned 0 matches. Not one. Every organic substance on Earth shares something with something else. That is how biology works. But this compound sat outside every known category. It was like finding a color that did not exist on the spectrum. She did not panic. That was not her way. She documented everything, photographed every screen, saved every file, and she told no one. Not yet. She wanted to be sure. But somebody else was already sure. The next morning, her supervisor, Dr. Alan Marsh, called her into his office. He was not alone. A man in a gray suit sat in the corner chair. No introduction. No name badge. Alan looked uncomfortable. He told Karen that a government liaison had requested a meeting regarding the Lakeview Cemetery project. The man in the gray suit smiled. It was not a warm smile. He said the federal government had an interest in the biological findings and that a formal review process would begin within the week. Karen asked what kind of review. The man said he was not authorized to discuss specifics. Believe me, when a government official tells you he cannot discuss specifics, that is when the specifics matter most. That same afternoon, Karen received an email from a pharmaceutical company, not a small one, a global firm. The email was polite, professional. It offered a research partnership and generous funding in exchange for exclusive access to the compound data. Karen had not published anything. She had not told anyone outside the lab. So how did they know? She deleted the email. She was not interested in partnerships. She wanted answers. But the calls kept coming. 2 more companies by the end of the day. One from Europe. One from a biotech firm in Singapore. All of them polite. All of them eager. All of them asking about a compound that Karen had not told a single soul about outside her own lab. She sat at her desk that night staring at the vial under fluorescent light. It looked ordinary. A small sealed tube. Clear liquid with a faint amber tint. But the data said otherwise. The data said this was something the world had never seen. And somehow the world already knew. Karen locked the vial in the biohazard safe. She changed the access code. She wrote the new code on a slip of paper and put it in her wallet. She was not paranoid by nature, but she was careful. And careful people survive. And then came the part that changed everything. She was leaving the lab that evening when campus security stopped her at the front entrance. An elderly man had been sitting in the hospital lobby since noon. He would not leave. He would not speak to security. He would not give his name. He carried a leather satchel and he held it against his chest like it contained something sacred. He had said only one thing to the receptionist. 5 words. She is the only one. Karen walked into the lobby. The man looked up at her. He was small, thin. His face was deeply lined and his eyes were calm in a way that made everything around him feel loud. He stood slowly. He bowed his head once. And then he said her name. Not Dr. Liu. Her first name, Karen. She had never seen this man in her life. He said his name was Master Yun. He said he had come from a village in the Wudong Mountains of central China. He said he had been waiting a very long time for this moment. And he said he carried something that belonged to Bruce Lee. Something that would explain everything she had found in that blood. Karen did not believe him. Not right away. She was a scientist. She did not accept claims from strangers in hospital lobbies. But there was something about the way he spoke. No urgency. No desperation. He was not trying to sell her anything. He was not trying to impress her. He spoke like a man delivering a message he had carried for decades. Like the weight of it had shaped his posture, his voice, his entire life. She asked him how he knew her name. He said Bruce Lee had written it down. Not her specifically, but the description. The person who would be assigned to study the body. The scientist who would find the compound first. Bruce had written it all down 50 years ago. And Master Yun had memorized every word. Karen looked at the satchel. She looked at the old man. She looked at the security guard standing 2 steps behind him. She said one word. Show me. And that is when the real story begins. He began talking before she could ask a question. He said that in 1968, Bruce Lee traveled to central China under a false name. He was not there for film work. He was not there for martial arts training. Not the kind the world knew about anyway. He had heard rumors of a monastery hidden deep in the Wudong Mountains. A place where monks had spent centuries studying the limits of the human body. Not through fighting. Through chemistry. Through breath. Through compounds extracted from plants that grew only at certain altitudes during certain seasons. Bruce found the monastery. It took him 3 weeks of hiking through terrain that had no roads and no markers. When he arrived, the monks did not welcome him. They tested him. For 6 days they gave him nothing but water and silence. On the 7th day, the head monk sat with him and asked one question. Why do you want to go further than the body allows? Bruce answered. And whatever he said, it was enough. Now here is the thing. Master Yun was not a monk. He was the monastery's herbalist. A young man at the time, 20 years old. His job was to prepare the compounds, grind the roots, measure the doses. He had been doing it since he was a boy. He knew every formula by memory. And when the head monk instructed him to prepare the protocol for Bruce Lee, he followed the instructions exactly. The protocol was not simple. It involved a precise combination of herbal compounds taken in sequence over 90 days. Each dose was paired with a specific breathing pattern and a specific physical movement. Miss one step and the whole thing failed. but follow it perfectly and the body would change. The cells would slow. The tissue would harden. The blood would carry a compound that no modern science would ever be able to identify. Because it was not one substance. It was the result of a reaction that only happened inside a living human body under exact conditions. Bruce completed the protocol. Every step, every dose, every breath. And when it was over, his body was different. Faster, stronger, more resilient than any human Master Yun had ever seen. But the monks warned him. They said the protocol was not a gift. It was a loan. The body would be preserved, but there would be a cost. And that cost would come without warning. Bruce did not listen. Or maybe he did listen and chose to accept it. Master Yun was not sure. But Bruce left the monastery and went back to the world. He made his films. He became the most famous martial artist alive. And 5 years later, he was dead. Karen sat very still during all of this. She did not interrupt. She did not take notes. She just listened. And when Master Yun finished, she asked the only question that mattered. What was the cost? Master Yun reached into the satchel. He pulled out a leather-bound notebook. It was old. The cover was cracked and the pages were yellow. But the handwriting inside was precise and deliberate. Diagrams of pressure points. Breathing cycles drawn in circular patterns. Chemical notations in a mix of English and Mandarin. And on the last page, a single sentence written in red ink. The body holds. The mind releases. This was Bruce Lee's training journal. It had been found inside the tomb, resting beside his body. The preservation team had catalogued it but had not opened it. Master Yun had requested it through the family estate. They gave it to him without question. He was, after all, the only living person who could verify what was inside. Karen examined the diagrams. She recognized the molecular structures. They matched the compound in the blood. Not approximately. Exactly. Bruce Lee had been documenting what was happening inside his own body. He knew what the compound was doing. He knew how it worked. And based on the final entry, he knew what it would eventually take from him. That night, the lab results leaked. Karen did not know how. She had told no one. But by 9 o'clock, 3 major news outlets had published stories about an unidentified substance found in Bruce Lee's remains. The university switchboard crashed. Her supervisor called her at home. He was not calm. He told her a federal review team would arrive within 48 hours. All materials related to the project were to be surrendered. No exceptions. Karen hung up the phone. She sat in the dark for a long time. Then she got up. She drove to the lab. She copied every file, every scan, every data set onto a private external drive. She put the drive in her coat pocket and walked out. She was now in violation of federal protocol. She knew that. She did it anyway. But that night, something unexpected happened. Nothing. The government liaison called the next morning and extended the deadline to 1 full week. The news cycle moved on to another story. The phone stopped ringing. Master Yun checked into a small hotel near the university and said he would wait as long as needed. Karen went home. She cooked dinner for the first time in days. She ate slowly. She washed the dishes. She sat on her couch and felt the tension in her shoulders begin to loosen. For the first time since the tomb was opened, everything felt manageable, quiet, under control. She slept deeply that night. No dreams, no alarms, just silence. And she had no idea what was coming. The phone rang at 4 in the morning. Karen grabbed it before she was fully awake. It was her lab assistant, David. His voice was shaking. He said the blood sample had changed. Not degraded. Changed. The compound inside the sealed vial was moving, reacting, expanding at a molecular level in response to atmospheric exposure. It was not inert. It had never been inert. It was biologically active. And it was doing something that no preserved biological material should ever do. Now, stop and understand what this means. Up until this moment, the question had been simple. What is this substance? That was a mystery, puzzle, something for scientists to study and argue about in conference rooms. But the moment that compound started reacting inside a sealed vial 50 years after it was drawn from a dead man's blood, the question changed. It was no longer what is this? It was what is this doing? And that is a very different kind of problem. Karen was dressed and driving to the lab within 10 minutes. She did not make it inside. 2 black SUVs were parked at the building entrance. 4 men in tactical gear stood at the front doors. A woman in a navy suit held a clipboard and blocked the path. She identified herself as Federal Agent Dana Reeves. She told Karen that by order of the Department of Homeland Security, the university laboratory had been seized. All biological materials, data, and equipment related to the Lakeview Cemetery project were now under federal jurisdiction. Karen was not permitted to enter. She was not permitted to contact any member of the research team, and she was expected to present herself for a formal interview within 72 hours. Karen asked about the blood sample. Agent Reeves said she was not authorized to discuss specifics. There it was again. That same line. Not authorized to discuss specifics. Karen drove to Master Yun's hotel. She needed to talk to him. She needed the journal. She needed someone who understood what was happening because she no longer did. But Master Yun was gone. The front desk said he had checked out at 3 in the morning. No forwarding address. No message. His room was clean. The bed had not been slept in. He had left nothing behind. Karen sat in the hotel parking lot for 20 minutes. She was trying to think clearly. Then she checked her phone. She opened the encrypted folder where she had backed up the lab data. The folder was there, but the files inside had been accessed. Timestamped at 2:47 a.m. Someone had copied everything on her private drive remotely. Before the lab was seized. Before David called. Before any of it. Whoever did this had moved first. She drove home. She turned on the television. And that is when she saw it. A press conference. Live. A pharmaceutical executive standing behind a podium with a corporate logo the size of a wall. He was announcing a new research initiative into what he called a longevity compound derived from historical biological data. He used words like groundbreaking and unprecedented and once in a generation. He smiled the entire time. He did not mention Bruce Lee by name. He did not have to. They already had the data. They were already building a product around it. And Karen had not even finished her analysis. Believe me, that is the moment she understood. This was never about science. It was about money. It was about control. And she was already too late. But she was not done. She spent the next 6 hours searching. She called the family estate. No answer. She called David. His phone was disconnected. She drove to 3 different locations associated with Master Yun based on the notes he had shared with her during their conversation. A temple in the International District. A tea house on King Street. A community center near the waterfront. Nothing. Nobody had seen him. Then, at the 4th location, a small Taoist temple tucked behind a row of shops in Chinatown. She found him. Master Yun was in the back room. Alone. Burning papers in a metal basin. The room smelled like ash. He looked up when she entered. He did not seem surprised. He did not seem afraid. He seemed tired. Like a man finishing something he had been putting off for a very long time. He said he had made a mistake coming to Seattle. He said the letter was supposed to be enough. The warning. The 6 words. But it was not enough. People do not listen to warnings. They never have. Then he reached inside his coat. He pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a vial. Not glass. Jade. Dark green. Smooth. Ancient. It was no larger than a finger. And it was sealed with wax that had not been broken in over 100 years. Master Yun held it out to her. His hand was steady. His voice was not. "This is the last of it," he said. "The last dose of the original compound. The one Bruce used. If they get this, they will never stop. They will make more. They will sell it. They will destroy what it means." Karen looked at the jade vial. She knew what taking it meant. She would be in possession of stolen biological material, copied classified data, and an ancient substance with no legal provenance. Every door behind her would close. She took it. And Master Yoon closed his eyes like a man who had finally set down something unbearably heavy. Karen needed a lab. Not the university lab. That was gone. She needed somewhere private. Somewhere clean. Somewhere no one would think to look. She called the one person she still trusted. Dr. Nina Patel, a former colleague who had left academia 3 years earlier to run a private forensic consulting firm out of a rented space in Tacoma. Nina did not ask questions. She never did. She gave Karen the door code and told her to lock up when she was done. Karen drove to Tacoma that same night. Master Yoon sat in the passenger seat holding the jade vial in both hands like a man carrying a candle through a storm. Neither of them spoke for the entire drive. The lab was small but functional. Clean surfaces, proper ventilation, a centrifuge, a spectrometer, everything Karen needed. She put on gloves. She broke the wax seal on the jade vial, and she extracted a single drop of the compound inside. The analysis took 4 hours. She ran every test she knew, and the results confirmed what Master Yoon had told her. The compound inside the jade vial was identical to the one found in Bruce Lee's blood. Not similar. Identical. Same molecular structure. Same unknown markers. Same impossible signature that matched nothing in any database on Earth. But there was more. Inside the outer casing of the jade vial, tucked into a thin channel carved along the interior wall, Karen found a rolled piece of silk. She unrolled it carefully. It was a scroll. Old, fragile, covered in handwritten Chinese characters and detailed botanical illustrations. Master Yoon looked at it and his breath stopped. "The temple formula," he whispered. "I thought it was lost." This was the complete recipe. Every plant, every measurement, every step of the protocol, the breathing patterns, the movement sequences, the timing between doses. Everything Bruce Lee had followed was written on this scroll. And at the very bottom, in ink that had faded but was still legible, was a single line written by the monks who had created the formula centuries ago. Master Yoon read it aloud. His voice was barely above a breath. "What is preserved in the body is taken from the soul." And there it was. The truth. The cost the monks had warned about. The protocol worked. It preserved the body in ways that modern science could not explain. But it took something in return. Not physical. Not measurable. Something deeper. Bruce Lee's body had survived 50 years in a sealed tomb. But something else had not survived. Something the monks believed was more important than flesh and bone. Karen understood now. Bruce Lee had not died from a brain edema. Not really. The compound had done what it was designed to do. It held the body together. But the mind, the spirit, whatever word you want to use, that was the price. The protocol demanded a trade. Preservation for presence. The body lives. The mind releases. That was what Bruce had written in his journal. He knew. He had known all along. Now here is the thing. Karen barely had time to absorb this before the door opened. The man in the gray suit, the government liaison. He stood in the doorway with 2 agents behind him. He looked at Karen. He looked at the jade vial. He looked at the scroll laid out on the table. And he smiled. That same cold smile from the first day in her supervisor's office. He said he was prepared to offer her a deal. Full immunity. No charges. No investigation. All she had to do was hand over the vial, the scroll, the external drive, and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Walk away clean. Go back to her life. Forget any of this happened. Karen did not answer right away. She reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out her phone. She placed it on the table face up. And she pressed play. The recording was from their very first meeting. The one in her supervisor's office. On it, the liaison clearly authorized the tomb opening. He referenced internal memos confirming that the family estate had not given full consent. He discussed the biological findings before they had been officially reported. Every word was time-stamped. Every word was clear. The liaison's smile disappeared. Karen said one sentence. "You authorized an illegal exhumation, and you knew what was inside before we opened it." The room went very quiet. The liaison looked at the 2 agents behind him. They did not move. They did not reach for Karen. They looked at each other. And then they looked at the floor. He left. No deal. No handshake. No threats. He just turned around and walked out. The agents followed. The door closed behind them. Karen stood alone in the lab with Master Yun. The scroll was still on the table. The jade vial was still in her hand. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, she was the one in control. If this story has kept you with me this far, do me a small favor. Hit subscribe. Because what comes next is something no one expected. Karen did not sleep that night. She sat in the Tacoma lab with the scroll unrolled in front of her and the jade vial standing upright on the counter like a small green monument. Master Yun sat across the room in a folding chair. He had not spoken since the liaison left. His hands rested on his knees. His eyes were open but distant. He looked like a man watching a memory play out on a screen that only he could see. Karen studied the formula one more time. Every line, every symbol. She understood enough of the chemistry now to know what it could mean for the world. This was not just a curiosity. This was not just a historical footnote. If the formula was replicated, if the compound was synthesized and mass-produced, it would change everything. Medicine, aging, the entire relationship between the human body and time itself. It would be worth more money than any drug ever created. And it would be fought over with a ferocity that would make the last week look like a rehearsal. She also understood what Master Yun had been trying to tell her from the beginning. Some things are not meant to be products. Some things are not meant to be sold. Some knowledge exists not to be used but to be protected. And the monks who created this formula had known that. They had guarded it for centuries. They had shared it exactly once. With Bruce Lee. And they had watched him pay the price. Karen made her decision before the sun came up. She was not going to publish the findings. She was not going to sell the compound. She was not going to hand it to any government or any corporation or any university. She was going to destroy the data. All of it. The scans. The files. The backups on the external drive. Everything. Master Yun watched her without expression as she formatted the drive. Took less than a minute. 16 years of professional instinct told her to keep a copy, to hold something back, just in case. But she did not. She watched the progress bar fill and she let it go. The next morning, she called the family estate. A woman answered. Karen told her everything. Not the science. Not the politics. She told her about the compound. About the monastery. About the protocol and the cost and the letter and what it all meant. She told her that Bruce Lee had known what would happen, that he had tried to warn them, and that the warning had been right. The woman on the phone was quiet for a long time. Then she asked Karen one thing. Can you close it? Can you put him back the way he was? Karen said yes. The resealing was done on a Tuesday. No press, no cameras, no officials. Just Karen, a representative from the family estate, and Master Yun. The tomb at Lakeview Cemetery was opened one final time. The training journal was placed back beside the body. The seal was restored, and the stone was set back in place by hand. Master Yun stood at the graveside for a long time after it was done. He did not pray. He did not chant. He simply stood there with his hands at his sides and his eyes on the ground. When he finally turned away, he looked lighter, younger almost, like a man who had been holding his breath for 50 years and had finally let it out. Karen asked him what he would do with the jade vial. He said he would take it back to the temple, back to the mountains, back to the place where it was made. He said the monks would know what to do with it. They always had. She asked him if he thought anyone else would come looking. He said yes. He said they always come looking. But the formula was gone now. The data was gone. The only thing left was the compound in the vial. And once it was returned to the temple, it would disappear the way it was meant to. They walked together to the cemetery gate. The air was cool. The sky was gray in the way Seattle skies are gray. Not dark, not heavy, just quiet. At the gate, Master Yun stopped. He turned to Karen. And for the first time since she had met him, he smiled. It was a small smile. Tired, but real. He said, "He would have liked you. You know when to stop." Karen did not say anything. She just nodded, and she watched him walk to the waiting car. He did not look back. She visited the tomb one more time. Alone. The stone was sealed. The grass around it was still and undisturbed. There were no reporters, no agents, no executives with press releases and corporate logos. Just the grave of a man who had pushed his body further than any human being before or since. A man who had discovered something extraordinary. And a man who had tried, in the only way he could, to make sure the world was not ready for it. Karen placed her hand flat on the stone. She held it there for a moment. Then she turned and walked away. Some secrets are not hidden because they are dangerous. They are hidden because the world has not yet earned the right to understand them. And this one stays buried.